The Germans are heading to the polls today, 6 months before what should have been a normal election cycle. And this is because the coalition of German Chancellor Scholz did not hold together. For more on the German elections, we're now joined live by SABC News correspondent Trent Murray, joining us live from outside the German parliament. Trent, typically when an election is called earlier than usual, that has a negative impact on turnout. What have you been observing so far with regards to turnout?
Yeah, that's right. There's been a lot of analysis on this because this election is being held right in the height of the European winter. They were concerned that it may cause issues with turnout. Certainly here in Berlin, we understand turnout is fairly on track with what we saw last time. But in several other cities, it's up, while in other places it's down. Now, what that will mean later tonight when the votes begin to be counted, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly some of those parties will be pushing really hard to get their voters out and to make sure that the winter weather doesn't deter people getting out and exercising their democratic right. The only reason this election is being held right now, though, is because of the early collapse of Olaf Scholz's government. This election was meant to be held kind of around the springtime here, which would have made for a much better campaign, certainly for those volunteers and people out canvassing and door knocking and the like. But alas, that early collapse of the government meant we've arrived here in this February election, and we are now just over 90 minutes away from those first results being released as part of the national exit poll.
Yeah. Is there any word on whether or not Friedrich Merz has reached out to any other party trying to form some coalition, while the CDU-CSU coalition on the one hand is not too far away from the AfD, politically at least, ideologically they agree on things like anti-immigration, nationalism, or at least a very nationalistic approach to their politics. There has been a wall between them. Has he reached out to the AfD to potentially form a coalition with them? Because by all scores and all measurements, they might have to do so.
The short answer is no. Friedrich Merz has made it abundantly clear throughout this campaign that he will not work with the AfD. Now, part of that is a political call. They are the traditional kind of conservative party in this country, the CDU that is, and they don't want to see those moderate people, those people that are in the middle that would vote conservative, be deterred from casting their ballot that way out of fear that they may work with the far-right AfD. So even if the AfD does very well tonight and does place second, that's certainly the way the polls are looking, it is very unlikely they will enter any sort of coalition negotiations. Now, on the flip side of that, it does make it harder for Friedrich Merz because he's effectively putting to the side about 20% of the vote based on current estimates. And so he'll have to go and look elsewhere to try and find other coalition partners to form a majority. Those partners could include the environmentalist Green Party, Olaf Scholz's left-wing Social Democrats, even a pro-business party. So, look, early days, we'll have to wait and see what the results are, but certainly that coalition building is something that's going to take some time, a lot of negotiation as they try and trade post cabinet positions, ministries, policies. We could be locked in for several weeks, I would expect, of those negotiations.
Yeah, and of course, this election comes because the coalition had collapsed. Is the collapse perhaps something that could drive voter sentiment to swing from a left-wing or a far-left voter sentiment to a moderate right, far-right voter sentiment? Is that something that you've been hearing from German voters?
Yeah, look, it is, because the former government of Olaf Scholz was made up of three parties, all quite diametrically opposed in terms of their views, but they kind of got together out of a marriage of convenience in order to form a majority. I think that three-party experiment in government is one that Germans haven't necessarily warmed to. The fact that there were some quite public disagreements, they came to blows at times in terms of some of those arguments, then of course they collapsed in the end. So I think Friedrich Merz's message has been a strong government led by his party and one other may be the answer. We'll have to wait and see whether that's a vote-winning message.
How has the public reacted to the endorsements of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance and Elon Musk for the AfD?
I think they've been slightly perplexed by it, to be perfectly honest with you. We've been out speaking to many voters about this very issue, particularly the intervention of Elon Musk. Many people are sort of scratching their head wondering why a foreign billionaire has decided to involve himself in this country's election. It's quite an interesting situation with Musk because he has built a car factory here in the past couple of years, and that factory was built based on many negotiations with some of the parties he's now turned his back on and thrown his weight behind the AFD. Look, we'll have to wait and see. I think certainly speaking to some of the AFD sources, they tell me that they think that endorsement did help them. It sort of normalised them in many voters' minds. But also, I think that, like in many countries, people are always very cautious when a foreign billionaire involves themselves in the domestic affairs of another country that they don't live in and they're not from.
Yeah. Trent, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Trent Murray is SABC News correspondent coming to us live from Berlin, outside of the German parliament.